All right, it's 7:01. I'll call this February meeting of the City of Burlington Historic Planning Commission to order. Could we take a roll call?
Sure. Chair Pennington.
Here.
Vice Chair N.M.S. Buick.
Here.
Okay. Member Williams.
Here.
Member Beesman.
Here.
Member Seiler. Here. Member Warren is absent. Member Benson.
Here.
Here you are.
I'm here.
Okay. We have a quorum.
Great. Can we approve the minutes? I trust everyone's had a moment to review the minutes. Are there any revisions, changes? Can I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Great, the minutes are approved. We have one major COA on the agenda for today. Item 1, HD 24021, a request by Mr. Patrick Robinson to install solar arrays on the roof of the residential dwelling at 1004 West Davis Street in the medium density residential historic overlay district. Ms. Lawson?
Okay. As usual, included in your packet, there's a staff report as well as the applicant's application and supporting materials, findings of facts, and other materials included. The applicant is present and will be able to speak for herself shortly, but I'll just provide the general context of the application. The property owners would like to install solar arrays on the existing building that is at 104 West Davis. However, if you're familiar with that property, it does have 3 street-facing sides. The primary entrance for visitors, I would imagine, and the residents off of West Davis serves kind of the front facade, and then the rear off of Edgewood is for vehicular traffic. She can correct me if I'm wrong. You also have the frontage along Central Ave and the side that is abutting the vacant lot. So this is a unique piece of property in that it has all of those frontages, as well as you'll see in the description. The lot itself is about 3/4 of an acre, so it is a fairly large lot compared to some of the other properties, most of the other properties within the district. In addition, the house sits back further from the street or the right-of-way compared to some others. So, as I stated, they're interested in installing solar arrays in 3 different areas. And let me just see if I can pull up some of the materials so everybody is on the same page.
Jamie, if you want to jump to, well, we can go through the entire packet if you want to, but I think that the best image for the committee to look at is on page 25, and that's what I was planning to reference. Just,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I said, here's the property for context purposes. And the application materials. This was what I was mentioning, the facing off of West Davis. There are no proposed arrays on this facade. These are pictures that were included from the applicant. This is the side that's facing the vacant lot. There are some panels that are proposed on this rooftop. This is at the corner of
Central
Central and Davis. So there are also panels that are proposed on this rooftop. And then this is the quote-unquote rear, and then the panels are proposed on the white membrane on this flat portion of the roof that is over this overhang. We've got some materials from the contractor included here, and then is this 25?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So that just shows the orientation.
Yes.
So we will talk more about it.
So this again is West Davis here, Central over here, Edgewood here, and then the vacant lot over here. Other illustrations and examples of solar arrays included too. So I'll just get quickly to our design guidelines and standards. So our design guidelines and standards, while updated a couple of years ago, only address solar arrays in an essence being recommending them to be not visible from the street. You can see that makes this property pretty difficult to completely comply with those standards. And so we did reach out to some other cities that also have standards related to solar panels and solar arrays, specifically Durham, just to our west. And while their standards, are not exactly in line with ours, there are some provisions specifically dealing with arrays and treating them as even minor COAs and applications, but with more input in terms of the aesthetic of the arrays, the compatibility of the arrays, and language associated with that. I would note that, and maybe the applicant can speak to this more, if you're looking at the building per se, there are a number, the building the house is fairly large and steep in height. So you also have chimneys and other appendages, that's probably not the right word, but other architectural features that guide your eyes even further up. So I think those are different things that the commission should be considering above and beyond just that our standards address them from the street level. I would suggest that the board consider, the commission consider evaluating, the placement of the solar arrays with respect to the buffering and the screening that's already in place, with respect to the massing of the dwelling as it exists now, and with respect to the scale of the arrays in relationship to the overall structure. This is a relatively new type of application, especially for a lot of the commission members. So that's why I'm going into a little bit more detail and context. I would imagine that we will continue to receive applications going forward as well. So, and we may have to adjust our standards to accommodate things like this.
Was the State Historic Preservation Office helpful at all?
So they did provide a couple of the articles as a reference included in the materials that you've seen. They were not able to provide specific recommendations pertaining to this application. They said that they could. They said if that was required, it would take up to 30 days for them to review that. And I know that based upon feedback that I've heard from the applicant, associated with cost of materials and the willingness to get the process going, we wanted to put them on the agenda as quickly as possible.
We'll swear the applicant in.
Sure. You want to come up and get sworn in? Introduce yourself first, and then I can swear you in.
This is a weird, little awkward position. Yeah, so I'm Emily Robinson.
And do you swear or attest that the information you're providing is the truth to the best of your ability?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to add anything in terms of summarizing your case?
Sure, happy to, or we could start with any questions that could also help guide the conversation that we have tonight. If you could go back to page 25, I'm going to touch on that a few times.
Sure.
And could you enlarge that? So staff had recommended that we address a few things that weren't detailed out in the application, so I was thinking that we could start there. So this is a conceptual rendering that the contractor has provided for us, and they don't have any rendering software that would really show how these panels will look on our house, and that was something that staff had asked us about, but they don't have that type of simulation software. But I think that this is probably the best demonstration of where the panels would be installed. So in the rear of this image, that's the rear of the property, and so you have Edgewood Street behind that. Edgewood is not a street that's within the district boundaries, so the district boundaries end behind our property. Central Avenue is to the right of this image, also not within the district boundaries. So the primary elevation is facing from Davis Street, so that would be the top of this image. And what we're applying for are an array for the flat roof section that's the most southern exposure, and those would be completely hidden from view. It's a ballasted system. There were questions about the height that they would be installed off the roof. It's about 6 to 8 inches because of the ballast, but again, the depth of the wall around that section of the roof would completely hide them from view. On the sides of the house, those are flat-mounted arrays. And so they just follow the slope of the roof. They're mounted very tightly to the roof structure, about 3 inches off the roof.
You're talking about the ones on either side?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And those would also not be visible from the primary elevation, which would be from Davis Street. So any questions there?
So,
Do we have, oh, I'm sorry.
no, please, Chris.
Do we have, some of the pictures seem to do a pretty good job of showing how much tree coverage there is that might screen. There might be natural vegetation that's screening those side. It seems to me that the flat ones aren't as much of an issue because of their location. The side ones might be more visible, but from what I could see in some of the pictures in the packet, it looked like trees somewhat screen off those spaces so you can't really see them.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we have any good pictures of that.
We can roll back through those images too, and those were pulled from Google Maps, so that's an exact image that you would see from the street.
So this, you
Yep.
can also describe.
So this is the rear of the house, taken from Edgewood, so looking towards the back of the property. Again, that flat area of the house that like juts out from the main portion of the house, you wouldn't see any of those, and that's like that would be the primary array system there.
And there is a wall.
Yeah. So if you were
It's around
standing,
it.
if you were standing on the membrane on top of that roof, there's a wall that's about 2.5 feet.
Okay.
And you have seen applications in the past for installing additional membranes. It's usually the white membrane that serves to help protect that area.
And so this is a view from Edgewood Street. We have several Leland cypress they're actually taller than the house. So those provide a really nice screen for our home. So the arrow is pointing to, like, that's the section of roof where another array would be installed. And those would be, again, the flat mounted arrays that extend about 3 inches off the surface of the roof.
So it looks, if you have Leland cypress that are tall, those don't usually go dormant. I mean, they're still bushy and
Yeah,
green
they're evergreens.
year-round.
Yes, they're evergreens.
So we wouldn't have an issue with, you know, seasonally, when the leaves fall off the tree, you're still not gonna be able to see.
Yeah, we have several really nice evergreens. So then this is the corner of Davis Street and Central Avenue. Really good coverage there. We do have some, I mean, those are crepe myrtles and cherry trees. But again, you still wouldn't really see that side panel too much from the street corner.
And do you want to also, oops. Cross my fingers it stays on. Do you also want to describe some of the vegetation on the opposite side?
Sure.
Facing
Yeah.
the vacant lot?
So we have crepe myrtles. The largest tree on our property is it's a magnolia, and you can see that in the edge of the image, and that's also evergreen.
And these, the vegetation is all on your property?
Mhm.
From what I can see, comparing that photo on page 25 to the pictures you're showing now, it looks like if you were facing the house from Davis Street, that none of this would be visible at all, because even up top, not only do you have that vegetation, but it's behind the chimneys that are kind of jutting up from the roof, and it's flat.
Yeah, that last picture you just scrolled by, that's from Davis Street, right?
This is from Davis Street.
Yeah.
So
And that hides that one side pretty well, other than the vacant lot that we just saw earlier.
right, and I think that the fact that we have the magnolia, and that's the largest tree in the front of the house, and it's an evergreen, it will really, I mean, it does just hide that side of the house. So we have really nice privacy on those 3 sides of our home. So this is the primary elevation, and once the panels would be installed, if you were standing on the sidewalk here, you would not see any panels.
From this angle, they're on the left and the right-hand side behind the chimneys, if I understand
Right.
correctly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you, I think I'm correct that if you were further down Davis Street, sort of standing in front of the vacant lot, you would see that side, right?
There's one view, and it's, yeah, if you're closer to 1016 West Davis Street, there's a section of the roof that's maybe 10 or 15 feet towards the back that you could see. Yeah.
So what about the color of the panels, especially?
They'll be black.
They'll be black, and your roof is gray.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Emily?
Yes.
Hi, Emily.
Hi.
John Paisman. I live at the other end of Edgewood Avenue.
Okay.
So, but I drive up and down that road a lot, go down to Capitol, make the left and continue on.
It's a classic route for people that
Yeah,
are
it's
trying to get
lots of people
downtown.
do it.
Yeah.
We do it going to and from church. It's just, it's the way to go. And I will say that I have never noticed your roof. So it's
rather unremarkable.
Fairly well hidden. And I also have a magnolia in front of my house, and it is dense.
Yeah, it
You
is.
cannot see through that
Yeah.
at all. And to Brian's point about the color, is there an option to do something that changes that fits in with the roof color, or have you looked at other alternative?
The
And by the way, it's a very well done presentation. They spent a
Thank
lot
you.
of time
It is.
put a lot of
Thank
time and
you.
effort into it,
Yes,
so.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
The alternative would be a silver panel, which we thought aesthetically that black would be the best choice, even though it would be a slight contrast from the shingle color. It would still be less noticeable than a silver metallic looking panel.
What kind of shingles are they? Is it an asphalt shingle?
Yeah, they're composite
Pretty standard.
on the, like the slope portions of the roof, and then the flat roof is the
Membrane.
the waterproof membrane.
But it's not a slate roof, or anything?
No, no, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
And is the rendering on page 25, does that accurately show the placement of panels, the number of panels,
Yes.
and their
Yes.
Size?
Yes, and with this arrangement, it would allow us to go almost fully off-grid year-round. And so we do have other sections of the roof that are flat and could, again, completely hide panels. But you can even see in that image, they're shaded, or like on the right side and the left side, even though when this image was taken, that right side is in full sun, because it's a lower first floor roof, as soon as the sun moves closer to the center of the house, that would be shaded. So this is what the contractor recommended to maximize our energy potential from the array.
So it looks like you opted not to put panels on the flat top of the roof, the central roof.
We did not, and we actually think that if we did do that, because on a flat roof, you have to have the ballasted system, the weighted system to hold them down. You can't screw directly into the membrane. Because of the rise off the roof, they would perhaps even be more visible from the primary elevation. You might see a cap, almost like a floating cap on top.
Speaking of installation, how will they be installed on the asphalt shingled part of the roof?
You know, that's a good question, but I would think that they would be bolted on. Another thing that Patrick and I talked about that we wanted to share tonight is this wouldn't be a completely permanent change to the home. So if we were to ever sell the property and the future owner didn't want to capitalize on the investment that we made in these panels, they could be removed and there would be no trace left of the panels.
Yeah, the ballasted system is literally just held down by weight.
Yeah, yeah.
So would you say that the natural slope of the roof is at a grade that makes the panels most efficient in their placement, but also because of their slope, they're not extending any further high. The height and the slope are in a natural grade with the roof.
Yes, and it would be a pretty clean line. Again, the projection would be about 3 inches off of the slope portions of the roof.
One of the questions I had asked Patrick, because in my former life in New Jersey, there were a lot of photo sims done for new cell towers, not necessarily for solar panels, but I'm very used to people, consultants, putting together photo sims. So I had asked him whether or not the contractor was able to do photo sims. I actually think that the picture that he provided makes it look worse than it really would be.
We did too.
This that we're looking at here, James.
It's this image in your packet, and when we saw the packet, we were like, gosh, it's better not to even include this. This is, you can just tell they don't have a way to, clearly we're not gonna mount panels on the side of a crepe myrtle tree. Yeah, we're not, that's not what we're going for. And I think that they look very blocky, and I think that this does more harm than good, perhaps. There were images in the packet of, from a portfolio of sorts that they had provided from other homes. There was like a Cape Cod style roof. I don't think I printed those, but
I think we have it, yeah, per Cape.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, I mean, it's hard to know exactly the dimensions of this. Can you, do you have a detail that kind of explains the...
That's a much bigger array than what would be installed. So you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panels on the B side of the roof from this, yeah. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on C side. And they are behind 2 chimneys. So I do think, I mean, you're looking at the front of the house, you'll see the chimney. I don't think you'll necessarily be focused on or noticing what's
Jamie, can you
behind it.
scroll in on that picture? Because I think you get a better idea of how close to the actual roof surface it is by that picture. So it's pretty tight to the surface, it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like it's 3
Yeah, like-
inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was keeping it out here because I was trying to envision whether these are individual panels as you count them. It's hard.
They are, yeah, like you can see a faint line, but that's a good demonstration of how
Looks like
tightly.
it's almost 30 panels on that
Big
one
one.
part of that roof, which is way more than you're proposing.
Yes, for those
For those two
sections.
side pieces.
Yeah. But they're installed very, like with no space in between. It's not, it'll look more or less like a solid unit.
I have an ordinance question. So our ordinance doesn't specifically talk to this, but I think you said it just, does it say specifically cannot be seen from the?
So the language is.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the language says.
The language says, this is on page 1 of the staff report, as per the city's Burlington's local historic overlay design standards, installing solar panels, if visible on the street, would require a major certificate of appropriateness, and if not visible from the street, would require a minor COA.
Okay.
So the reason why they're in front of you is it will be visible to some extent, but it also doesn't address special circumstances where there's 3 streets. So ideally, in some cases, while this is unique, you could have a property similar to this photo where if they had arrays on the back and they were not visible from the street, they could be treated as a minor COA.
Right.
But in their situation, they don't even have that option.
Yeah, on that side of West Davis, your primary facade is facing north, but on the other side, you're likely to have requests where people would be installing on the backside.
Yeah. On a block like that, with very large properties, and especially theirs where it's 3 frontages, you don't have a rear per se. You know, we talked about this with the applicant, and I think the facade that faces Edgewood is probably closest to the rear, just kind of by the way that the property functions. But that's also where, according to the applicant, it's not going to be visible at all. So it doesn't really help the argument. But I just wanted to bring that to our attention. It's something that we probably need to address going forward
Yeah.
with the standards.
So in terms of like precedent, does staff have any concerns about if we were to approve this application, any precedent we might be setting for future applications? And is there language we should have in the minutes that would sort of outline sort of what might guide
Sure.
future decisions?
So, you know, just on every application that you receive, every application that you consider is on its own merit. It is the burden of the applicant who is requesting the major COA to present their case, and you're basing your decision on that particular circumstance. So, in my opinion, while this could be precedent setting in terms of situations where we've got similar characteristics in terms of the lot itself, I don't think that you can base further applications should be based solely on this. Every application is unique, with different circumstances, and, you know, I think that what works for this property may not work for other properties. In some situations, the commission could say, well, what about, you know, on the ground? Have you considered solar panels on the ground? And that may work for some other properties as well. There might be other options. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Bree, are you able to get some of that in the minutes? About
Yeah.
application, each application on its own merits,
Yeah.
I think is relevant here.
And I
And,
think, you know, I think also with the motion, you've heard the facts and statements from this applicant.
yeah,
And that is the reason why you're basing your decision either way.
so in light of the property's situation facing 3 streets, and there being significant vegetative screening on 2 of those elevations, on the rear side, the array on the rear side won't be visible from the street. I think those are relevant issues that should appear in the minutes.
And I would further add that the vegetation is on private property, so it's not like it's in the public right of way. And you may want to add some kind of condition associated with that.
Yeah,
But that's up for you to consider.
right.
To add to the distinctions you're making for precedent purposes, maybe a couple of other small things could be that the configuration is primarily, the main part of this array is on the flat back roof where it's not visible at all. And they've been able to minimize those 2 side pieces in the choice of placement right behind those chimneys. And so really, I don't know, I live at 622 West Davis and I drive that little central hook every day to get to work. So I would agree, you know, with other comments that I've certainly not noticed the roof or anything, you know, remarkable. I mean, the property is pretty well screened, yeah. Can I mention one other thing, or 2 other things from the design standards themselves that seem like could be relevant here and maybe even in future cases, I don't know. I was noticing on page 7 in the introduction to the new design standards, number 5, in pointing out the specific benefits of historic districts and landmarks, it's saying that one important general benefit is, quote, local districts are energy efficient. Many older buildings were designed with energy conservation in mind, taking advantage of natural light, cross ventilation, and climate appropriate materials. Preservation commissions are also increasingly improving their design guidelines to make it easier for historic building owners to use renewable energy technologies. So that, I mean, seems embedded in the purpose of the design standards, that we're not intending to block the use of renewable technologies. And then some of the more broad-based intent standards talk about intent number C is provide for education, pleasure, and enrichment of residents and all citizens, fostering his civic beauty, stabilizing and enhancing property values, and contributing to the overall improvement of the general health and welfare of the city and its citizens. So it seems to me that, you know, allowing people in the historic district to embrace renewable technologies when appropriate and when well thought out is a good thing, or it's consistent with what I'm reading.
I appreciate you saying that, and that's very much in line with the way that we feel. And we talked about this when we submitted the application, but whether or not solar panels are intrusive, to me, it's in the eye of the beholder. And when we see somebody that has solar panels on their home, we think, wow, that's somebody who's embracing technology and supporting green energy, and that's the primary reason that we want to add these to our home.
And making a major investment in the improvement of that property. It shows the commitment that the homeowner who's willing to spend the money and the time to present this and invest in the technology. I mean, it kind of shows a long-term commitment to the property. So,
Right, so we're taking some care here because this is the first application of this sort we've had in my memory. And we anticipate probably others like this will follow at some point. It's only conceivable, seems more or less. So are there other questions from commission members?
I just have one question of Jamie, if we can ask one more. You alluded to the vegetation being on private property.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a precedent in other major decisions, appropriateness decisions, for including in the language some sort of condition that those trees be maintained over a period of time, or as long as the solar panels are on the roof, that they need to make every effort at least to retain the vegetation that helps screen them, or something to that effect?
So.
I mean, you can't predict if a tree is going to get a disease in it or
Yeah,
something and you have to take it down, but
It's a tricky question. So the way that I guess I'll address it is, our standards currently allow for maintenance of existing vegetation without any oversight by staff. That was one of the changes that we made to the current design standards. However, if a tree is dead or dying, they also do not necessarily have to come in front of the HPC or even apply for a minor. That is also considered general maintenance, with the caveat that staff strongly recommends that the property owner have their own arborist, or even our city arborist go out to help verify that that is the case. So, I mean, I would ask the applicant in terms of what comfort level they have, because, you know, in some cases, if a tree comes down and it's dead or dying, there's nothing that we can do about it, you know, and then the buffer that's in place is not the same buffer. And I would imagine that it would be difficult to install new vegetation
that height,
that
yeah.
would be that successful that quickly. So, you know, I guess I would let the applicant sort of address that issue, because we are recognizing that the vegetation is part of the screening of the property.
Especially on the Central Avenue side.
Well, I would just say that we are very committed to having those screens, because otherwise we would be fully exposed on 4 sides. We have an empty lot, and then we have streets on 3 other sides. So we are plant people. We take care of our plants. We fertilize them, we prune them regularly. So not only would it be, I guess, important to the city and to this board for that vegetation to be there, but without it, I mean, we wouldn't have a lot of privacy. So if something were to happen to the cypress trees, then we would want to replace them with mature trees within our budget, just so that we could have that privacy.
You were suggesting earlier, Jamie, some kind of condition around vegetation and screening. And then
Right, how could
Seem
we
to
word that
hesitate.
to make it not
Yeah.
too onerous on the property owner, but also, if you sold the house in 2 years and a new owner moves in and then they want to cut down a magnolia tree or cut down the Leland cypress, I presume that if we put a specific, or at least some sort of guideline, asking them to come back and
Yeah, I would
and
just-
consult with you at least on a minor certificate as part of that process.
So, what I would suggest is that the applicant or property owner, whoever that may be, wanted to expand the solar arrays in any fashion or modify them, they would have to come back to the HPC. I would also add that in your deliberations, you may want to say that the existing vegetation is part of your consideration for this application, and in doing so, because they're dead or dying, and that's subject to an arborist decision and confirmation that that there is replacement vegetation to the extent feasible and practicable within a period of time, and you can condition that period of time. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Well, we're just,
Well, wording
we're just
these
trying to explore
resolutions
what's
is also
a sort of defensible set of conditions around this that would.
Does that seem to be fair in some, in
Yeah,
your words?
that, we would want that. I mean, there are also things out of our control. Duke Power came in and severely pruned the cypress trees a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago. They filled back in, but they did not ask us if we could do that. They did not ask the city. So all I can say is that we would want that screen there. And if something happened to it, we would want to replace it with trees that would mature quickly and, yeah.
So, can we work on a motion?
Can I ask Jamie one more question
Sure,
about
sure.
wording? In your estimation, might it be sufficient to say that if future changes have to be made because of disease of the trees or other unforeseen circumstances, that whoever the property owner is at that time needs to come back and request at least a minor certificate of appropriateness and consult with you before just doing, like you were saying earlier, that in other situations, a homeowner might be able to just hire an arborist and do it without even coming to you for a minor certificate. And at least if we could attach a condition that they would need to consult about a minor, through a minor certificate process. I don't know if that's sufficient, but.
It's always difficult in my experience to put the onus on a future property owner who may not be aware of something.
Yeah.
We've had those situations in the past, and because the COAs are not, let's say, recorded at the Register of Deeds, it's not something that you can easily track in addition. So that's why I was suggesting if there was to be some kind of expansion or alteration to the existing arrays, they would definitely need to come back. I think if you added in as a condition that if there were changes to the vegetation, trees, the screening, that either documentation would need to be provided by a city arborist or the applicant would have to provide some kind of replacement landscape plan.
Given that that's not recorded on a deed, implementation and enforcement of that might be a challenge. It might make sense, and I think we're all kind of dancing around the same issue, right? We're trying to say, this is, our approval is conditioned on the vegetation. How do you say, if the vegetation changes, our approval goes away? I don't think we can, right?
We have, you know.
There's no way to enforce it, though, I'm saying.
It is, by your COA approval or denial, that is the action that's taken.
Right.
So that is the, in essence, overlay that's applied to the property. And if it's found to be in violation, then we have to go to a different course. But your approval with those conditions is, is the
Right, no, I get it, yep.
Yeah.
I think we're all trying to get to that same point where it sounds like
And you can
approval
add
conditioned on the
conditions
current.
that Any deviation from these required conditions would void this COA. Something like that.
Yeah, I think that,
And so what would that mean, that the city would be at liberty to ask the homeowner to uninstall panels? Or, the COA is something that allows us to make the change, but it's not, it doesn't extend forever and ever, right? It's like a,
Well, the COA, if the panels are removed, let's say, you're no longer consistent with this COA. And the conditions of the site may change, and the standards and the guidelines may change. So it doesn't live in perpetuity, so. But let's say you had a situation where the roof had to be repaired. To me, that's a different kind of situation where, you know, you may not have to apply for a brand new COA because you're just
Repairing.
going back to, I mean, you have to
My
keep in
question-
mind that we're.
If the conditions
we're
change.
Uncharted territory because.
precedent setters.
If the conditions change, if we put a condition on it such as the vegetation, if that condition changes, then then the city could come back on that COA because it's been changed. Then the city might require that vegetation be replaced to meet to meet the conditions placed on the COA.
Well, I guess that's why I'm suggesting that you add the language into your conditions now, so that there's a mechanism in place so it doesn't overburden the applicant to each time there's some kind of
Right.
modification to come back for clarification. So I would say you want to provide some guidance, but also allow some leniency too.
Could we do a conditional approval given the current vegetation? And then if there's a situation in the future where you want to alter the array and there's a change in vegetation, that would be something to come back and they could reconsider vegetation.
I think I was saying not any situation they would have to come back for vegetation but if that's the commission's interest, then, you know, this is your decision and your conditions that you're setting.
My lean, we're all having this great, we're all dancing around this. My lean is to say, approve with the current state of vegetation. But not try to anticipate every single leaf that's going to blow in the wind and is going to change. Just say, that's our approval is based on the current state of vegetation. If that changes, it's going to change in the future, but if it changes negatively, I'm just trying to think, the ultimate remedy is if somebody cuts a tree down, the city could then say, please take away your panels.
Or
But that would be the-
plant another tree.
Or plant another tree, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, good point. That would be the
Or-
ultimate remedy,
Yeah.
but that's not for us to decide now how that would be
Right, right,
resolved.
right.
We're going to say, we approve the panels with the current state of vegetation.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
I think that's
Just
the
full
most
stop, right?
elegant
Just-
way
yeah.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You get them, water your trees. It's good.
How do people feel about that,
Trying to
including?
figure out how to word it. It's complicated.
If-
What's the simplest way of wording what
So-
you just said?
Yeah.
Why could we say that it's approved with the understanding that the existing vegetation that's there, if that were to change in some way, the homeowners would make reasonable efforts to replace that vegetation that was lost?
Here's what Bree came up with as she was listening to all this.
I was like, I can. So the motion could be to approve the application with the current state of vegetation and on the conditions that if any changes or additions are made to the solar panels or if any major changes happen to the vegetation, the applicant would need to come back to the commission to reconsider the application.
I think I would take away the change in the solar panels, because that's, if we were going to change something in the solar panel without our making that statement, you'd still have to come back for a COA, right? If you want to add more
I
solar
would make it
panels.
clear.
Yeah, I think it just makes it clear
Yeah.
that they would have to do that. That way there's no misinterpreting.
Because
I
under the
remove my
current,
objection.
under the current standards, the way I interpreted them was if it's out of view, then you don't have to come back.
Right.
That you don't have to come to the commission, but that if they're in view, so you could interpret that, well, we knew they were in view when we approved this, and therefore now they can put as many panels as they want. So
Yeah.
that, I agree that it just makes it more clear.
The only thing that I would say is you may, I'll read it again so you can hear it one more time, and just think about major changes, those words. Make a motion to approve the application with the current state of vegetation, and on the condition that if any changes or additions are made to the solar panels, or if any major changes happen to the vegetation, the applicant would need to come back to the commission to reconsider the application.
I'm okay with major, because major to me means the magnolia is struck by lightning and has to come down, or is dead, or disease. I look at major as an act of God or disease on the larger vegetation. I'm okay with major personally, that language. Bree, I think you did a great job on it.
Can I ask a question just to make sure I'm understanding this? So we, like I mentioned, this arrangement and the quantity of the arrays will give us what we need to make our home fully off the grid. So I can't imagine why we would need to expand the array or install more or change the arrangement. But if something happens to those cypress trees, does this mean that we then have to submit an application now to like protect the investment that we've made in the solar panels? We would have to come before this body with a landscaping plan, or just submit that to city staff? So, hi, that's,
So I will normally put our friend in the audience on the spot, because when we have situations where, you know, staff wants oversight, we will sometimes suggest that the landscape plan is approved by the city arborist or something like that, so that, you know, there is some merit besides a planner or planning staff just taking a look at it. So what I guess I would say is, because so much of the topic is based upon vegetation, it's hard to say, well, if the vegetation wasn't there today, would the commission be feeling the same way? So that's kind of why
I'm curious to know.
I mean, I think if the vegetation weren't there on the Central Avenue side, I'd have questions about that side in
About that side.
particular.
So,
I mean, that side is facing the oldest house in the historic district, you know, it's in a like central part of the district.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're all in that mood to approve it based on the fact that it's somewhat hidden by the vegetation. So without trying to solve every possible future problem, I'm just trying to say, we're approving it based on vegetation. As with anything else, if there was a major change, obviously we might have to reconsider. I just don't know the mechanism. And I'm trying not to put words in there to anticipate what the future might bring. My crystal ball is incredibly muddy. I don't know how to plan the future.
And to be clear, I mean, the standards say, if approved, solar panels shall be located so as not to be visible from any street. So that's pretty like cut and dry in the standards.
So the
and that we're all
vegetation-
sort of constrained a little bit by that.
Yeah. And I think if we're trying to read into it, the worst case remedy, if a tree came down and was non-replaceable, we're not suggesting this happens, but the worst case remedy might be, I'm sorry, you now have to take your panels down because you can see them, and we just have determined that that's inappropriate. We don't want that to happen. We don't want the tree to come down. That's the worst case remedy, so that would be the worst case risk, to Emily's point about making a substantial investment in solar panels. There's a risk with everything. There's a risk of rocks falling from the sky. There's a risk that a tree might fall down. Unlikely to happen. So, but I think we probably want to say approved. I'm not trying to put words in everybody's mouth. Approved with the current state of vegetation.
Would it be appropriate or not appropriate to perhaps put that determination down the road, not to put more in your guys' lap, but to say that if these scenarios happen in the future, they would need to come to the planning commission for a determination on whether a minor or a major COA would be needed to determine how to move forward. Something to that effect, that if there's this major change you're talking about, that from what you were saying earlier, it's not entirely clear from today's viewpoint whether such a change, until we know what that change would be, we wouldn't know whether it would need a minor certificate of appropriateness or a major certificate of appropriateness. But they could certainly be required to come to the planning department so that the planning department could make that determination. And then it would be handled under either the major or the minor part of the,
So,
ordinance.
I think that expansion or alteration cannot occur unless they apply for a new major COA. I would like to see the commission's take on whether or not, if the trees or vegetation are subject to a major alteration, I forget what, a major change, meaning dead or dying, that the applicant could bring forth a replacement plan for staff to consider.
Yes.
See, that seems-
If
If we
seems
call that a
reasonable.
minor
Yeah,
certificate,
in consultation.
that they would have to get it at minimum a minor certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that seems reasonable.
And then you can consult with them at that time if and when such a thing happens on what the best and appropriate course of action would be. And get the arborist involved if it seems appropriate.
Okay, just for clarity, I'm going to repeat what I said.
Sorry.
So there's a suggestion by staff that if there are any expansions or alterations to the existing solar arrays, the applicant would need to apply for a major COA. You're also going to add a condition that the existing vegetation remain. However, if there are major changes such that the trees and the vegetation are dead or dying, the applicant must provide a replacement landscape plan that is approved by the planning department in consultation with the city arborist.
Do we want to say the process of that approval would be a minor certificate of appropriateness, or we don't want to get that specific?
I think just in consultation, we can, because who knows what will be, hopefully we will never have to address this, but who knows what the standards will be like at that
Yeah.
time. So if they come with a replacement landscape plan, at that time, we would decide what the proper protocol would be.
Tell us when you think you have that, Bree.
I'll make
I have one more thing to add, I think.
The only other unpredictable thing that you mentioned, which I, have seen it happen, aside from an act of God like a hurricane or, trees falling down, is that Duke Power does come through, presumably with some permission of the city, but I don't know how that works between Duke Power and the city. But I guess they have some sort of legal
They
right
have a
to
right-
justify
They
hacking
have a right of
trees
way.
that are close to a
Yeah.
power line. And sometimes they hack way more than, what would reasonably be necessary to protect that power line. So, I don't know if that would be a major
Are there power lines
change
that
under
run
our
along
lingo
that
here.
street on that side?
There are, and there are images in the packet that show that. And it was another thing that we were talking about when we were just going through the subject of, is this intrusive? From that back corner, you see like 9 different power line structures. That to me is very intrusive.
I can see that now.
So.
But the
it's, we've
homeowner,
gotta-
the point being, the homeowner doesn't have control over what Duke
No.
Power comes through and does.
That really needs to go underground.
Well, maybe you know somebody at the city that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, compared to those power lines, even a visible solar panel on a roof, in my opinion,
Is
would be
unobtrusive.
less intrusive.
Okay, so now the motion may be to approve the application with the current state of vegetation and on the condition that if any changes or additions are made to the solar panels, the applicant would need to return to the commission through a major certificate of appropriateness. And/or if any major changes, dead or dying or outside the applicant's control, happen to the vegetation, the applicant would need to come to city staff with a replacement landscape plan approved by the planning department and the city arborist, which may entail a minor certificate of
Good,
appropriateness.
okay, great.
Or-
Can,
I make a motion that we approve that.
can
Can I change one word?
I know.
It's a stupid
course,
one, but
but of
it's
course.
where you say the applicant would need to return. Can we say the homeowner would need to return? Because it might be a different applicant than the one who's before us today. Does that make sense, or does that not matter?
Well, I don't think it matters, because typically we are receiving applications from the homeowners. We are not taking applications from, I cannot submit an application on behalf of the owners here without their consent. So the consent is always the property owner providing the application.
Right, that's why I would like to
Could we
change
say
that
current
word to
applicant here,
owner
because
rather than
they're
applicant.
Current homeowner at that time.
Because it could be a different homeowner if the trees died 5 years from now and you'd already sold your house to some future owner.
But that puts the onus on somebody that may not be aware of that.
And I get
That's
that
only-
But
Yeah.
it makes it hard, it is a hard thing to enforce, but at least
Yeah.
it's some matter of record.
Yeah, I agree. You can just say that there needs to be a new application, doesn't matter who it's from.
Right, put it in passive voice or whatever. A new application would need to be submitted, or a new major COA application would need to be submitted.
So I know Bree's still working on the language, so I just want to suggest to everyone else a phrase at the beginning that might say something like, in light of this property's situation fronting 3 streets.
Great idea.
Just so
That
the
would
reasoning is
distinguish
clear
this
about.
application from any future precedent, as precedent setting for future.
Given what the standards actually say.
In light of this property having frontage on 3 streets.
Unique frontage, the.
Emily, also, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, well, it's-
This
You
is
get the word unique in
This
there
is unique for
somewhere,
us.
making this case sound kind of like a special case. This home's unique setting with fronting on 3 streets or something like that. Or with street frontage on 3 sides or something.
Yeah, that's better.
So, what I think I heard was, based on the factors that were presented during this case, including that the property has
Uniquely situated with street frontage on 3 sides or something like that.
there is, and in addition to the other factors that were discussed, there's a motion.
There might be in a second.
There's a motion to approve the application with the current state of vegetation and on the condition that if any changes or additions are made to the solar panels, a major COA or major certificate of appropriateness application would need to be initiated, regardless of
then there was an and/or after that.
ownership.
And/or
And that includes the
major,
vegetation.
yeah, major change in vegetation.
And/or if any major changes, dead or dying or outside the applicant's control happen to the vegetation, the applicant would need to come to the city staff with a replacement landscape plan approved by the planning department and the city arborist, which may also entail a minor certificate of appropriateness.
How does our homeowner feel about that language? Does it seem?
The only
Workable?
question that I have, and I'm not trying to lengthen this any further, but the part that is about outside of our control, is that, does Duke Power fall into that category? Like if Duke comes and tops the Leland cypress and the panels are exposed, then what is our responsibility then? That is out of our control. Would that mean that we would need to remove what would be left of those trees and submit a new landscaping plan?
I think that it is extremely difficult
Yeah, we could be here all night.
to predict any of those situations, and that's why if there is a situation that is outside of your control,
We call you.
That's in consultation with
Yep,
staff.
okay.
Yeah.
There's any number of future remedies. It might be as simple as technology changes, and we now have a solar panel that looks exactly like your shingle. So that removes all objections because it looks exactly like the roof does now. That's a possible remedy that might exist in 5 years. Any number of remedies.
It
But
might
this-
be that the design standards change within those 5 years to be more specific about, allowing solar.
We might even have our motion written in the next 5 years.
Okay. Speaking of,
Yes.
I think we need a motion.
I like it.
Bree has the language, but
Based on the
Mike,
language that has been provided.
Okay, if that's, are you good with what I have? Okay. Anybody?
I second the motion.
Yeah,
We need to read it.
Michael's moving
Yeah.
it, so maybe he should.
I guess we need to read it into the record.
Am I reading it? I thought you were reading it. All right,
Whoever's making the motion should probably.
Yeah, Michael's good.
okay. Can I make a motion based on the factors presented at the meeting of the three, wait a minute, is this right?
including, you have to kind of read into it.
Wait a minute, I gotta read this first. I'll make a motion based on the factors presented during our meeting of the, do you want me to read it just like you wrote
Including,
it?
instead of the, maybe including.
Yeah. Of the property, of the uniqueness of the property, including 3 road frontages.
Yeah.
To approve the application with the current state of vegetation, and on the condition that if any changes or additions are made to the solar panels, a major certificate of appropriateness application would need to be initiated, and/or if any major changes, parenthetically dead or dying or outside the applicant's control, happen to the vegetation, the applicant would need to come to city staff with a replacement landscape plan approved by the planning department and the city arborist, which also may entail a minor certificate of appropriation. Appropriateness.
Okay.
Second?
Motion is a second. Okay, be finding the fact. In the minutes, there's one standard included. Which says that new roof features such as skylights, dormers, vents, and solar panels shall not be introduced if they compromise the historic roof design, material integrity, elements, or character of the area. If approved, they shall be located so as not to be visible from any streets.
I would also add
Yeah,
the
no.
reference that Christina mentioned regarding the purpose and intent of the design standards to be included in that.
Right, so if we want that in the record, that is, those two things I mentioned, the first is on page 7, item number 5, the general, which references the general benefits of making it easier, quote unquote, to make it easier for historic building owners to use renewable energy technologies, unquote.
Yeah.
And then the other quote from the standards was, on page 11, that to just reference the general design standards intent on page, labeled A5 of the standards. On the PDF file, it's page 11. And I think you could just reference those in general, because it's adding to the beauty, providing for the education, pleasure, and enrichment of residents and citizens, stabilizing and enhancing property values, and contributing to the general health and welfare of the city and its citizens.
Good.
Which it seems to me, so this particular solar proposal would do.
Are there other findings of fact people want read into the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve findings of fact?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second. All in favor? We just do roll?
Let's
just
do a roll call.
Okay.
Chair Pennington,
Yes, approve.
Vice Chair Hewler,
Yes.
Member Benson,
Approved.
Member Seiler,
Yes.
Member Paceman,
Approve.
and Member Williams.
Approved.
Okay, There's a motion on the table to approve the application. Is there further discussion of the motion? Can we take a roll call vote?
Sure. Chair Pennington,
Approve.
Vice Chair Hewler,
Approved.
Member Benson, Member Seiler, Member Paceman,
Approve.
and Member Williams.
Approved.
Okay. Your application has been approved with those conditions stated, and you can then move forward. We will have the yellow card and the COA that you can use towards your application for building permits.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Thank you
this,
for
and
being
you should
so
be
thorough.
proud of this decision. This is good for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. A lot of work.
Thank you for your hard work.
Our next item is new business.
No new business.
Is there other business?
There is other business. In the audience, I would like to introduce Alan Idle, sorry. My tongue-tied.
That's okay.
Superintendent of cemeteries
Grounds, yep.
and grounds. And he can introduce the guest speaker as well.
So, thank you all for having us today. Kind of to give you a little background on how we got here. Last year, spring, summer, Henry approached me about a possible project that he was interested in at Brown's Chapel. So, he and I met out there along with Jeff Parsons. I'm sure most of you know Jeff. Did a little tour of the site, talked about some of the history, how the city acquired the property and whatnot, and kicked around some ideas, and kind of what Henry has landed on is some signage for that. We had discussed some landscaping, and I kind of gave Henry some background on what we do and primarily what we don't do at that cemetery as far as upkeep and maintenance. We do keep it very simple just for the historical side of it. You know, we don't want to open that up to become a park, you know, where we invite people there per se. So we've really kept the maintenance to a very minimal level. So I'll introduce Henry to you guys and let him give you his spiel on what he would like to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. How you guys doing? Good.
Good. Welcome.
Thank you for making time tonight to listen to me and my project. So I'm a resident of Circle Drive. I've lived in the area for all my life. I'm 18 years old. And yeah, let's get started. So this is the view of Brown's Chapel Cemetery from West Davis Street. It's the plot of land. And if you guys can see a little bit in the bottom left corner, there's the current existing sign right there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
I've passed by it several times.
Yes. Okay, so some of you may know about the history of the site already, but maybe some of you might not. So, Browns Chapel Cemetery is the oldest cemetery in Burlington, with tombstones dating back to the early 19th century. The cemetery includes burial sites of local war veterans and many families of the area at the time. And also, the cemetery shows the transition of Burlington from a more rural town to a railroad town. And you can see this because of, actually, there would have been wooden gravestones, and that's stones, but they would have been made out of wood because stone was a foreign material in the area at the time. And so that would have had to been imported by the train from other regions in North Carolina. And the railroad came later in the late 1800s. And the reason why the cemetery is called Browns Chapel Cemetery is because it used to have a chapel on the land. It was built in the early 1900s and later taken down in the early 20th century. And it was one of the first churches in the area. It was a Methodist church. And it later served actually as a school for children and people living in the area, also highlighting the early educational system for Burlington at the time. Here are some images of the site and some of the grave sites. On the leftmost image is some of the ways the grave sites are lined up in a row with the headstone, the main tombstone, and footstones. And then on the other two images are kind of, some of them are more scattered out within the plot of land. And I don't think I have an image of this, but there is a fenced-in area still to this day with a family with grave sites there within. So the reason why I'm here tonight is I've been thinking for a long time, and with the help of Mr. Idle, on possible ideas for restoration. And we landed on the best thing we could do to promote this site is a historic marker. The current sign, as you guys might know, and I can later show an image if you guys are not aware of it, is a sign that says Browns Chapel Cemetery, circa 1842. But I do believe that there is a lot of important historical information about this site, and contextual referencing would be very important, which is what a historical plaque would do. So I think, the three main things a historical plaque would achieve would give greater prominence to the site and the value of Burlington, inform people, passing by on a walk or driving by about the site itself and its history, and also just, promoting the historical significance and beautification of Burlington as a whole. And so now I'm going to talk about more on what this plaque could possibly look like with visual examples. Here is something I designed a little bit. So this would be a cast bronze plaque, 18 inches tall, I guess, and 24 inches wide. And the tiling of this plaque would have 1-inch characters in height, and the historical information would be 0.7 of an inch to fit, and it would be around 60 words on the plaque itself, so that it's not too much information for relative to its size, but just enough to inform people with general information. And this is the image with the post mount, because it would come with a post mount, and slide behind. And here are some actual real life examples of what a 24 or an 18-inch by 24-inch plaque would look like. This one is in the Burlington Arboretum. And also, if you move to the next slide, the tiling of this plaque for the title is 1 inch in height, so an ideal size for what the proposed plaque would be. It's tiling for Browns Chapel Cemetery. And here is another plaque I found down at the train station, and the tiling for this is approximately 0.7 of an inch, an ideal height for the historical content on this proposed plaque. And kind of to wrap up, I thought it would be really neat to collaborate possibly with a local Burlington company. And Signtech Signs is a company that produces signs, makes signs. I believe they have made a couple signs in the Burlington Arboretum, including the one you can see from Church Street, a big sign just saying Burlington Arboretum. And they would be able to make a plaque, a cast bronze plaque, 24 inches wide and 18 inches tall with a post mount. And the cost would be approximately $3,300. And yeah, that wraps up all the information that I had to, I want to give to you guys tonight. I want to thank Mr. Idle, of course, helping me along the process. Jeff Parsons, as you guys know, he knows a lot about the site, and it was really neat talking to him after doing a lot of research, collecting old articles and newspapers relating to the site, and members of the Burlington Public Works, and also the information I got about the site was a lot from the May Memorial Public Library here in Burlington and North Carolina State Archives online. And once again, thank you guys for taking time tonight to listen to me.
Thanks, Henry.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
We have questions for Henry?
I have a question. I would be curious to see, can we go back to the slide where it shows the proposed sign?
Sure.
I would be curious to see where you got your information regarding the wooden headstones and the non-local materials.
Okay.
In my experience, I've seen, dating back to the early 1800s, North Carolina produced gravestone markers made of stone.
Okay.
And there were several local families to North Carolina, not specifically Burlington, that were making a majority of them. So I would like to see some documentation regarding that, but it is very interesting.
Of course. I believe I received that information a couple months ago from Jeff as we were talking on the site. Now relating to actual documentation, I will try my best to find some for you, and I'd be willing to send you some. Yeah, of course. Any other questions or comments?
Huge kudos to you for taking this on. This is really, it seems like it's a labor of love, or that it's something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, of course.
I'm really impressed.
I graduated from Williams last year, and now I'm just taking a quote-unquote gap year before going to college, and I've kind of always wanted to contribute to the community in some way before I left for college, and this is kind of what I landed on and what I've been working on.
Yeah, so just one comment and one quick question. The comment would be, I've noticed in more and more places, I don't know if you guys have seen this, in more and more places I visit that have these historical marker plaques, which are really cool and really educational, but nicely done. Like what you're proposing would be a high quality thing, and I think would enhance would be better than the signs that's there and would enhance the educational factor. I have seen a lot of municipalities and cities with these markers. Like my kid goes to college up in Philly, and they have a lot of these markers all around Philly. And more of them are putting some kind of QR code embedded or etched into the sign along with the words, that anybody walking by with their phone can hit the QR code, and then it gives you the entire history. Because you can only fit so many words on the sign itself.
Right. Of course.
So I don't know if that, I mean, I wouldn't think a little QR code would add much cost to your estimate, but it might require something I'm not aware of in terms of getting the city of Burlington, you know, cemeteries division or whatever, to have some little blurb on their website that would stay up there long term that could be connected to that QR code or something. So there might be an extra step involved in making sure that QR code actually leads to educational materials that are going to be maintained on the web somewhere for a long period of time.
Of course,
so
yeah.
That's just my comment. I don't know if it worked, but it would be worth looking into. The question is, so you put an estimate up there for around $3,000. So are you coming to the Historic Commission asking us, or maybe Jamie, you know this, to help fund that $3,000, or do you have ideas for grant resources or other ways to get that money so that we can get it done?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was my idea that I was here to get approval for this project, and then later for City Council, I would see about financially funding for this plaque. Now, I don't know if you guys have anything to do with the funding for this plaque, but it was my idea that I would talk to the city council next about that.
Yeah, we
If-
could discuss talking to the council about that, so, and working in public works to come up with those funds.
Yeah, Jamie, is there any precedent for this commission being involved in any way? Like, would it help if we passed a non-binding resolution of some sort that said we think it's a good idea, thumbs up, or?
Yeah, I think
know.
there's no formal application in front of you, but I think if you were so inclined, you could make a motion to, that you're in support of this project and,
It would have to enhance the historic and educational value of the cemetery.
that
or
you're in
something
support of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's enough. I think that, that probably would be what council would ask if they did not come to HPC first, to come and get some kind of recommendation.
I do like the idea of the QR code as well. And it would link to the Burlington website and talk about, yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And that was something that Henry and I had discussed. I think our major concern with that is, maintaining a website specifically.
That's why I think it'd have to go to the city website.
Yeah.
And there'd have to be some sort of little blurb on the city website that's maintained by the cemeteries division
Yeah.
or some organization that would be making sure it stays there.
Yeah, long term.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a great idea. It's a great force multiplier for all the information.
For the educational
Yeah, you
aspect.
couldn't put on the plaque because you just run out of size, right?
Did you utilize a cemetery census to determine who's buried there?
No, there are old records on the North Carolina State Archives with, I think people before working with cemeteries went through records, and that's where I think I got on the North Carolina State Archives, the people buried there,
Yeah.
and there are their names and everything.
And I'm sure it's just a draft. I would consider using more sensitive language towards enslaved people.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all this is up to change, and this is just a draft of what would be written.
Great job, Henry.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think it's
I
outstanding.
wonder if you just want to be in touch with Henry
Sure.
about suggestions about
Yeah.
that language and maybe about the,
If we were gonna do a resolution, maybe we could include in our resolution that we would suggest you collaborate with the Cemeteries and Grounds Division. Would that be the appropriate arm? Like to confirm the exact language, and appropriateness, facts and language and appropriateness of the words to appear on the plaque. But that we're in support of the idea of the plaque or something like that.
Do you want to be responsible for that?
I'm in it anyway. Henry's been great to work with, so this is his thing, and I think what impresses me the most about it is you got somebody, a young member of the community that's come, that's brought this up, not for a project, it's not a Eagle Scout project, there's, he's just doing it out of the goodness for the community, so I think that's what's impressed me, so I'll be glad to be involved in any capacity. So,
Are there further preservation efforts being made for Browns Chapel?
we've done very minimal work. I think back in the 90s, there were some efforts made with the state coming in and doing some ground penetrating radar and some recommendations made. One of the things that we get a lot of questions about are the beautification, going in and doing landscaping and additional landscaping, and we try to stay away from that. There's a lot of indentions in the ground, and in a lot of those areas, that indention is the only way you know that somebody's there. So to fill that in, it just takes away from that. We've discussed along the Davis Street side, putting a retaining wall up. That was something that I got involved with early on. The problem is you've got some really large oak trees there, so you're getting into the roots if you've got to excavate to get back, proper, the depth there. So you've got some constraints with that. You've also got some burials really close to the sidewalk, so you risk getting into that. And then you also have some challenges with accessibility when you put up a retaining wall. So there is along the right side of the property, there was a block fence that was there, wall. We took that down probably about 2 years ago. It was falling down and an eyesore to the neighbors and, you know, a danger also. So we went in there and removed that. But the back side of that property, there's also the same wall that extended along that line. But if you look at it, that doesn't signify where the actual property line is. So there's actual burials on the back side of that fence or wall that you would look at it and think that it's in those, you know, the neighbors' backyards there. So we try to do very minimal, you know, we've done some tree work this year and there, but try to be really careful about what we do.
My primary concern was with the erosion that's happening right on that street side.
Yeah.
And I mean, burial practices back then are not what they were today, but there would still be organic matter that could come through at some point. So I wasn't sure if there's a...
So we went in about 2 years ago and planted that entire bank with mondo grass, and just as I suspected, it hasn't thrived. You know, that's not the best of conditions, but I think Jeff over the years has tried everything under the sun to prevent that erosion, but so we'll continue to work with that.
Does anybody want to try a motion in support of Henry's efforts?
I don't know, I think we should probably do one that's at least broad and general, that we would express, I don't know exactly how to word it, that the commission would like to, while not having a formal role in the process of what Henry's proposing, we would like to express our support for maintaining the historical value and educational value of this site, and that we would encourage. Do we want to mention council at all, or just say we would support his efforts? Or we think his efforts are commendable?
I think that you want to recognize that there's collaboration with the Public Works Department, and I don't think you need to go into full detail about, you know, but you're just making a recommendation that this project move forward in consultation with the Public Works Department.
I don't know if it's worth, you made a mention of using appropriate language and sensitive language in the way, and, you know, fact checking everything before it goes actually on the plaque. So I don't know, is there a way to add some simple little phrase in there that you guys are going to consult with the appropriate Alamance Historical Society or other appropriate organizations that could help, or, you know, help with the specific wording on the plaque? I don't know if that needs to be in there or not. That's more.
You may want to just say that this is sample language and it's, you know, subject to revision. I don't know how detailed you want to get further beyond that.
I mean, the final say would come from the city council, is that right?
Of what actually goes on the plaque? Yeah, who would approve that, or would it be the Public Works Division?
We would look at it in Public Works, and what we would present to council would be the final, you know, they would approve that verbiage, you know, wording on there.
So there's an Alamance County Historical Society that might be able to be really helpful with verifying specific facts and coming up with the language, because they're used to wording this kind of thing on all the museums that they have and the plaques that they've created based on the history of Alamance County. I also noticed there's a Elon University librarian named Jesse Ackman who's been involved with Alamance County history and tracing the history of the cemeteries and Milltown developments over time. You know, those might be the Historical Society and the Elon Library.
I'm an architect,
Yeah, so I'm wondering if,
I would be happy to look at it if you want me.
just at least informally, before you present some specific language to council, get some input.
Sure.
Maybe. But as far as the motion goes, maybe you guys can help me. I'm happy to make a motion, but how best to word it, that we commend Henry, are in support of his, we commend his initiative, and are supportive of the way his proposal will enhance the historical and educational value of Brown's Cemetery,
Brown's Chapels.
Jones Chapel Cemetery. Yeah.
Sound okay to you?
And that we would encourage him to continue to work with the Department of Public Works in finalizing the language and details of the signage.
Well, this is being recorded, so we can always use that language. But I would keep your motions, clear and concise in terms of recommendation to support this project and whatever else you as a commission decide to include. But, definitely supporting it and moving it forward for completion.
Is this a resolution of council? It's not a binding thing.
No,
We propose a resolution in support of
you got it.
Henry's efforts as we agree.
Partnership with the.
In partnership
Public
with
Works.
the Department of Public Works as helping to preserve, enhance, and recognize the importance of Brown's Chapel Cemetery in the history of the city.
Is that your motion? I
Yes.
second that motion.
I'm happy for anyone to edit that language.
Is there any discussion?
There was a motion, there was a second. Roll call. Is that what you'd like me to do? Yeah. Okay. Chair Pennington,
Approve.
Vice Chair Peel,
Approve.
Member Benson,
Approved.
Member Seiler, Member Peaceman,
Approved.
and Member Williams.
Approved.
All right.
Henry, thank you, great job.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you guys.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate your
This will be
efforts.
a great thing for you to put on your resume for whenever you decide to do.
Yes, and we can share emails if you'd like.
Okay.
We can be in contact
Sure.
after
Yep.
you guys are done.
And thanks for your patience as well.
No, of course. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Is there any other business?
Just the minor COAs.
The minor COAs that are in your packet? Yeah, they're there
Oh,
for your
and I
review.
also wanted to mention that we did receive some recent information about training classes that we will forward on.
Okay.
That's good.
Keep up with your
Okay?
annual trainings. Great. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second?
Favor?
move to
Aye.
All in favor? In favor.